Good morning, everybody. Sorry, good afternoon, everybody. How are we all doing? Good? Yes? Enjoying the conference? Yes? Welcome to my last session. This is Judgment Day, Cloud Security Internals. Yes, the judge has arrived. You know, for the last few years, we've heard, oh, yes, it's all safe. Is it? Okay, so I'm going to take an unbiased look. Bearing in mind I'm a Microsoft MVP, but that's got nothing to do with it. So, I think you all know me by now. My name is Andy Malone. I'm an MVP from Scotland, and I specialize in enterprise security and now Windows Azure security as well. This is my book, but I'm not allowed to mention the name, so for publicity reasons, there it is. And the fact that it's available on Amazon right now is nothing to do with it. So, what are we going to cover? Well, really three areas that we're going to cover this afternoon. We're going to talk about the changing world. Now, I grew up, well, I moved into Microsoft when it was Gates and Balmer, and I'm sure looking at some of you, you're pretty old, so I think you're about the same age as me, some of you. So we've kind of grew up with the kind of Steve Ballmer, Steve Jobs, Gates type of thing. I met Bill Gates actually a few years ago. Very, very nice guy, and I've also met Steve Ballmer as well. And just my personal opinion, I think Satya Nadella has really revamped Microsoft in a big way. Would you agree with that? Yes? I mean, it's the biggest shake-up in kind of Microsoft history, if you like. And as I said yesterday, it was all of this, the fact that we've just been going through this new this third industrial revolution that we're actually going through right now, which is the age of the industrial internet. What's the next industrial revolution, I hear you say? Probably robots, I think. Yeah, droids, robots. I think we should have droids, personally. I want a BB-8. So we can talk about the changing world, how you can keep control, and ultimately we're going to talk about compliance. So yesterday I really focused on e-discovery and forensics. Today it's about compliance. How do I know that when I put my stuff in your data center that it's going to be secure and it's going to be compliant? Actually, this week, in fact today, is a really important day because the European Union are meeting today right now. So what I'm talking about in my presentation about EU law and so on is actually happening as we speak. And the industry is actually changing at the moment. So there's an awful lot going on. You'll notice that Microsoft are building data centers all over the place and in some strange countries. Germany, in the UK. They'll probably build one in Norway eventually. Why? Because they have to meet this new EU law and rule compliancy. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. We've all seen this guy before. He's probably down there, isn't he? In fact, I think I saw this guy down here earlier. But he's there going, yeah, look, don't worry about the cloud. Your stuff's safe with me. Okay? Don't worry about it. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, yeah, right. Okay? So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to convince you. Just a minute. I've got to do the voice. Excuse me. Convince me you must, yes? Okay, there we go. Yes? A Jedi you will become. Okay, so first of all, where's my stuff? Your stuff is, as I mentioned, here. This is the Dublin data center. Why do I keep showing pictures of the Dublin data center? Right now I feel like I live there. Okay, I'm spending an awful lot of time in Microsoft data centers. Has anybody been into a Microsoft data center? Yeah. Okay, so which ones have you been in? Dublin. Okay, so you know exactly what I'm talking about, right? Okay. So I've worked with the guys on the ground. Last year I spent 2 months in the Dublin data center learning from the ground up how everything is done. Learning about security. I've spent time on the help desk at Microsoft in Ireland, and I've also spent time in Redmond and also Chicago as well. So when I say I know how they do things, I'm actually telling you this from first hand. So as you appreciate, Microsoft are going for global domination. in the world when it comes to data. So right now, in fact, did you know that they're changing their name? Did you know this? Microsoft Cloud Services at the end of this year will be known as Skynet. Okay. I'll be back. So the fact is that in the European Union we had Amsterdam and we had Dublin. Okay. In the US we had a number of US-based data centers. Now though we've got data centers in Austria. We've got data centers in Finland. Well, let's face it, that Nokia acquisition had to be good for something, right? Certainly wasn't good for their phones anyway. Okay. But what we're now seeing is we're not just seeing regional data centers, we're now seeing a new generation of localized data centers. Okay? And again, why is this happening? Because you've got countries all around Europe bleating, going, I'm not storing my data outside Norway or outside Germany or outside the UK. I want to know where my data is. And in order to meet that compliancy, Microsoft are putting their hand in their pocket and they're building these data centers in association with partners. So, for example, in the UK, they're building them in association with BT. In Germany, they're in association with Deutsche Telekom. One of the reasons for this is because Microsoft have a default deletion policy. I mentioned this yesterday, the 30-60-90 rule. Remember that? So again, when you put stuff in the data center, you get 30 days free usage. If you don't pay your subscription, you get another 30 days. And on day 61, it goes into reduced functionality mode. Day 90, boom, that's gone forever. In the UK, under the Provision of Terrorism Act, 2000 and whatever it was, the UK government want to store your metadata for 2 years. So it may be necessary for data centers, depending on where you are in the world, to store your data for longer periods. Okay? So this is one of the reasons why this is happening. And also, if you think about it, the financial industry, the healthcare industry, pharmaceuticals, oil industry, these are all tightly controlled. And a lot of these industries, you've got to be, you know, for example, ISO compliant or COBIT compliant or whatever. Okay, so interesting times ahead with this. So first of all, you need to understand how the data center is managed. So before I even walk into a data center, you guys will know this, you've got to have an invitation. Okay, so you've got to have an invitation from a senior Microsoft manager. Okay, you work for Microsoft, no? Are you customers? You're customers, right? Okay. So if you work for Microsoft, you've got to either be an orange badge or a blue badge. You've got to have a written invitation from a senior manager to actually even get into the building. When you arrive in the data center, you need a government-issued ID. So just like going onto a military base, you need to put in your passport, ID, whatever. Getting into the data center, obviously once you get through all the physical stuff, working in it is quite interesting. So I come in the morning, it does a retina scan, and it does a handprint. And again, in some of the data centers, they're also rolling out voice as well. So you've got 3-factor authentication. You then walk into a, what do they call them? My brain's just gone blank. You walk into where one closes, the other one opens. What do they call that? Thank you, yes. Airlock type thing, yes? No, that was in Star Trek. So we walk into this thing, it weighs you. So if you've been out having a few drinks over the weekend and you put on a bit of weight, it will go, I'm sorry, this is not you. And it won't let you any further. Once you get through to the data center, you're then into the second level of security. And they will give you your job sheet. So your job sheet is simple. It will say, okay, you need to go to room 131 and you need to go to rack 20. They give you a geo-fobbed key, okay? All the time, there are cameras everywhere. It's like 1984, okay? So I go to room 131. If I walk to room 130 or 132, it's immediate dismissal. When I go into the room, I walk up to the specific rack, I take out the whatever it is and fix it. Okay? If I touch another rack, it's immediate dismissal. If I walk over to here where the PII, the personally identifiable information is, it's immediate dismissal. If that key that I've used goes off site, it's immediate dismissal. We're talking secure, okay? The guys who work on the ground in the data center have no idea what data is in that data center. So Microsoft have over 200 services, including Microsoft IT, that's their internal IT system. Most of the innovations that you guys see here at these types of events happen because they're produced internally first. So Nano Server, for example, is a perfect example of a technology that's needed in the cloud first. And then, hey, that's a good idea, let's sell that. All right? Highly controlled physical environment, multiple redundancy model. So yesterday I mentioned how many multiple copies of your data, 10 plus copies. Again, it always goes to a redundant data center. Now, if you're using a network traffic device like Wireshark, I had a customer the other week that said, hey, hang on a minute, Andy, when I log into Office 365, why is it going to the US? Why is it not coming, you know, I thought my data was supposed to be here. Okay, well, first of all, the NSA's got to get a free copy of your stuff, right? That's another story. No, seriously. So what happens is only the authentication part, the login, it just checks authentication there. So the data actually never leaves the data center, okay? Now, up until the last year or so, cloud security has been self-governed, okay? So you've heard of an organization called the Cloud Security Alliance, have you not? Yes, the CSA. Anybody can join it. That industry is generally vendor-driven, all right? Or that business is vendor-driven. So much of the governance that's been going on in the cloud has been vendor-driven. But what we're actually seeing now is the European Union sitting up in Brussels going, enough, okay? Because it's vendor-driven, there's no checks and balances. There's no proof. So now we need to draw a line under that and actually make it rule of law. Okay? So what was just kind of a flimsy set of agreements is now changing. So the first thing you need to understand about life in the cloud is the defense in depth model. So if you get any kind of computer book, Defense 101, you know, if you've watched Game of Thrones, you know, if we want to attack Joffrey, you've got to basically go through a lot of hoops and whatever. You know, you've got to go through a big castle, over a drawbridge, past the guards. So we call it defense in depth. So obviously we have the physical perimeter here. We have the physical security. We have perimeter security. So your firewalls. You might have your internal network. You might segment your network. You might have your host with all of its antivirus, anti-malware. Then, of course, you need to make sure your applications are all done. You know all this stuff. And then, of course, you've got the admin. So, again, you've got to say, is the admin trustworthy? Can we trust our staff? Again, in a Microsoft data center, staff are thoroughly checked. Okay, so if you work in a Microsoft data center, you've actually signed a top secret agreement. So not just a service level agreement or an agreement with your contract, you've actually signed potentially up to top secret status. And finally, of course, you have your data. So the idea is that if I want to actually get access to your data, there's a lot of shit that I've got to get through to get there. Okay, so you want to make it as difficult for somebody to get your data as possible. Except you, of course. Okay, well, sometimes that's not easily done. So the first thing about moving to the cloud is you need to know what you're buying. Okay, so if you go into, let's say, Office 365, their products are divided into what we call plans. So in Plan 1, for example, in Exchange, you won't get things like the capability to put mailboxes on legal hold. You won't get some of the compliance features. So you need to make sure, first of all, am I on the right plan for this? Then you've got to think about, what are the actual trusted cloud principles? Well, security is absolutely number one, of course. So we have 5 principles. Privacy. Absolutely, Microsoft respect your privacy. And I'm not just saying that, I'm saying it because I've witnessed it. We call it PII, personally identifiable information. It's the stuff that you all give away on Facebook every day for free, you know? So basically, in a cloud data center, we're talking enormous. These are enormous buildings. So you might have, in fact, we'll say you guys over here are the normal data. You guys are normal data. So this is like all your search data, all your Xbox stuff. There's no personal stuff in here. Okay, you guys are much better looking than those guys, so we'll say that you guys are the PII, your personally identifiable information. And never the two shall meet. In fact, if I even walk over here, I could lose my job. Okay, it's that sensitive. All right? Then we've got to think about control. This is where you guys come in. You guys have the controls. So Microsoft, we're back here. We build this stuff for you. You control it. You administer it. That's the deal, all right? Then we've got to think about compliance. Okay, this is all the legal checks and balances that we're going to talk about. And then finally, it has to be delivered in a consistent way. So when you walk into McDonald's, you're going to know that you get the same shit here that you would get in Amsterdam, for example. Okay, I like to call it the Game of Thrones principle. Yeah, he was a nasty one, wasn't he? Yeah, he was a nasty piece of work. The thorn in the crown. So Microsoft has spent billions, and they've tried to assassinate every single European leader, but it's not working. And the reason for this is because it's called the European Union. The European Union, love them or hate them, they're putting their foot down, and they're basically saying, look, you know, if you want to get these industries on board, you need to change. So the healthcare industry, the financial industry, defense, government, Microsoft would love to have that business in one of their data centers. But right now, as it stands today, Microsoft cannot guarantee that your data would not remain in this country. Okay? So, things are a-changing. What are they doing? As I said, meeting today, the European Union, they're basically ironing out legal and compliance. So EU regulation requires organizations to take appropriate security measures to protect personal data. A lot of it, though, is guidance. So there's guidance. Now, the industry is saying, yes, I'm compliant about this, but there's nothing actually in there to say that they must do this. Okay? So this is change. This is changing now, and it's changing because the European Commission is changing the way it allows cloud vendors to operate. And this will affect us all. It will have massive ramifications worldwide, not just to the European Union. The first of those you can see today in Germany. So Germany, Deutsche Telekom has just got together with Microsoft, and they've now built the first of 2 data centers in Germany. This will hold German government, financial, corporate data within German jurisdiction, within their legal jurisdiction. So if their government has specific requirements to hold data for a specific amount of time, then it will fall under that guidance. Likewise, in the United Kingdom, okay, again, everybody wants a piece of this government contract. They would love government business. So the plan is to open these new data centers. In fact, the data center just outside Reading, TVP, Thames Valley Park in Reading, just outside London, at the moment, who's got Windows, Azure, and Office 365? Okay, quite a few of you, all right? So you know that it's got things like anti-malware, you've got Exchange traffic management, monitoring, and all of that. So all of that comes out of the UK. So all of that is managed in the UK. And that same data center that we have there will soon be able to take Office 365 content for government contracts. So it's a very, very lucrative business, and Microsoft wants a piece of that. Question to you, who's the biggest cloud vendor in the world? Do you know? It's actually Amazon. Amazon is the biggest cloud vendor in the world, okay? And Microsoft have only a small slice of that pie. Microsoft would love a much bigger slice of the pie. And it's interesting that when you go to Dublin, Amazon have 2 European data centers right next to each other in Dublin. So, if there was a terrorist attack, it's going to wipe them all out in Europe. If anybody has got, not OneDrive, Dropbox. Anybody got Dropbox? Who's got Dropbox? Okay, Dropbox is a US-based service, period. There is no data centers for Dropbox anywhere in Europe. Okay, well, last time I heard anyway, unless that's changing. Okay, so specifically then for UK-sensitive data. So really they're looking for Microsoft contracts. Now, it wouldn't surprise me if Microsoft will come soon knocking on the Nordic door. In fact, I've heard that at the moment, a lot of your data is actually going to the Finnish data center. Okay. Scott Guthrie, who is a big guy at Microsoft, he's come out and he says, we can guarantee that UK customer data will always remain in the UK. And that's a bold statement, especially the way traffic works. So it's nice to see that Microsoft are going ahead. So just to give you an idea of it, how it's going to affect you, this is a little video courtesy of the European Union. Actually, I think that was actually filmed in Sweden. Joke. Okay. Okay, so what are the EU laws in a nutshell and how do they affect you? First of all, it's a regulation. This means it's not a directive, this is law. Okay? Data processors will be held responsible for data protection, and the regulation has global ramifications. Users will be able to make compensation claims. So if you now lose your data, yesterday I mentioned, if the shit hits the fan and you lose your data, Microsoft will fob you off and just go, it's okay, we'll just give you 12 months free service fees. And you'll go, thanks. Yeah? Not anymore. They won't be able to do that anymore. At the moment, their legal teams are trying to fight that. You can imagine they're trying to fight that. But in terms of financial compensation, that could run into thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars, pounds. What's that, about 10 krona, right? So there are higher rules now about transferring data or EU citizens' data outside the EU. Harmonized user data request rights. New erasure rights. So you probably heard in recent years, in the recent year or so, about the right to remove Google information about you. So if you don't like the fact that your house is in Google Street View or something like that, you now have the right to remove Facebook data. So you can delete your Facebook account, but be careful, that they can still have the archives. So we're only talking about current data. So you've got to be careful with that. All right. Number 8. It's the controller's responsibility to inform users of your rights. Tougher sanctions and streamlined incident reporting, and also encryption and tokenization can come to the rescue. So you've probably heard of 2 technologies that are coming to Windows Server 2016. One is called JIT, just in time, and one is called JIA, just enough administration. They're not new. They've been in Microsoft for years, okay? We've used them internally for a long time. What does that mean to you? It means that in OneDrive, if I'm going to share out my presentation, I can share it with all of you just in time. So I can say, hey, at 5 p.m. this afternoon, that's going to expire, okay? Or I'm going to give you admin rights to perform just this task, but again, it will expire tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. That's pretty cool, isn't it? So when, as a Microsoft employee, if I need access to your data, to your Lockbox account, to perform some administration, not only have I got to get senior management approval, I've got to get your approval. And once I get your approval, I'm a role-based access just in time with just enough admin rights. So it's very, very tightly controlled. So does Microsoft have access to my data? Does the NSA have access to your data? To be honest, well, ask Ed Snowden. And a lot of this has actually come around because of Ed Snowden, by the way. Okay, so he's actually done a lot of good for the industry. So personnel will have least privilege access by default. And as I've said, if I want access to your data, so the customer comes in with a support request for help on the Office 365 help desk. So what I've got to do is I've got to go to my line manager, and my line manager has got to give me written authorization. He then adds me to a specific group. Once I've got access to that group, I then send a request to you, the customer. You need to approve that request, and then I can help you. So without that, there is no access. You need to look at this page. Take a picture of that. Take a photo of that. Really important page. Okay? This article will change your world forever if you're doing business in the cloud. All right? So take a quick picture of that. Again, I'll make sure that you get these slides for a very good price, of course. I give a good price. Special price for you. Okay. So what about cloud storage and data encryption? I mentioned yesterday that all data in Microsoft data centers is encrypted. Okay? Well, when I say all data, that's not entirely true. Only recently is SharePoint data being encrypted. But more importantly, in Windows Azure, just about to come out just in time, of course, because of all of this, in Windows Azure, you're now going to be able to encrypt your data. Once you've encrypted your virtual machines, you will receive the encryption key. You are the only person to have access to that encryption key. So nobody at Microsoft, nobody in support, nobody can access your data without that encryption key. And I got to tell you today, that is moving into Office 365. So you will be able to say in SharePoint, for example, in OneDrive, I want to encrypt my OneDrive. It will present you with your key, and you can choose, do you want to store it securely, or do you want to take it away separately? If you take it away, it is no longer stored. But the warning there, of course, is if you lose that key, you lose access to your data. There is nobody at Microsoft that can get that for you. Okay? So be aware of that. So cloud data types. Data at rest. So it's at rest on a physical machine. Okay? So your files and so on. Data in transit. all data in a Microsoft data center is encrypted with SSL or IPsec and something like that. Well, not something like that. It is IPsec. Okay. Data in use. So data in use by the host, again, is also encrypted. Data in production, we're talking things like SQL databases and so on. Data not in use or not in production might, for example, if you've got virtual machines in Windows Azure, okay? And they're at rest. So again, all of these items are encrypted. So what are the different types of data that's stored in the cloud? So all your data in any Microsoft service, so Windows, Intune, Office 365, anything, your VMs, absolutely anything will fall into one of these categories of data. So Azure Cloud Storage, it's massively scalable, and I am not exaggerating that when I say that. This is on a scale that we've never seen before. Very elastic, so you can have as much or as little as you want. Everything is auto-partitioned, but the key thing is you can access this data from any device anywhere in the world. Also, the data is yours. It's legally yours, not Microsoft's. Okay. Also, it supports multiple OSs. So looking at that, when I save data to the cloud, the one thing you need an Azure account. So irrespective of the Microsoft, one of those 200 services that I've mentioned, it's a Microsoft Azure account. So whether it's Active Directory, whether it's Office 365, Xbox Live, they're all the same. Okay, it doesn't make any difference. Obviously, we've got different types of data. So we've got obviously shares of data, data tables, so containers, but they're all forms to the back. So if you're familiar with SQL, this will mean more to you than it will to me. You've got data blobs, entities, obviously messages, directories, and files. So blob storage is really, you can imagine if we had everything on a fat disk. Can you imagine that? If everything was in directories, how hard it would be to look through that. So it's much faster just to dump raw data, okay? You just dump raw data and you just call on it when you actually need it. So this can include things like features and documents, file backups, images, videos, all this kind of stuff. This is stored as raw blob storage in Azure, which is based on SQL, of course. Table storage, on the other hand, is different to blob storage. So table storage is unique because it has attributes, almost like a directory, a structure. Attributes, of course, of different types of object types, so Active Directory and so on. So this can support different types of data sets. Of course, you can access it through standard protocols, and there's a whole bunch of kind of standard protocols that you can use. File storage, again, things like applications on Windows Azure. You might want to gain access to those using SMB3 file shares. So, for example, give me an example that uses this. OneDrive for Business, OneDrive, and so on. You can access file shares by using a direct link, which I'm sure you're all aware. So I showed this slide yesterday. So cloud storage is different to what you have on a physical OS. So on a physical OS, it's limited. But on a cloud storage OS, you've got a complete audit trail behind it. You can archive the technology. You can discover, you can search, e-discovery. You can encrypt it, and so on. You've got things like data loss prevention policies. I'm going to show you all of this stuff in a second. So yesterday, I kind of focused on the red bit. Today, I'm really focusing on the green bit on the left-hand side. Yes? So we covered that kind of yesterday. So I'm kind of focusing on the green here as well. So we're talking about records management here, identification, preservation, and collection. So this really falls into what we call information governance. So if you're going to store data in the cloud, I need to prove that I'm compliant. How can I do that? I need to have approve information governance. And in Microsoft speak, we call this compliance. Okay? So it can include things archiving. In fact, I'm not going to go through that list. You can read that list yourself. But it basically comes down to different categories here. So you can see Office 365 services here. So you've got physical security. Of course, this is what you're paying Microsoft for. You're paying for the service. But I also want to know that I'm in control. It's my data, so I'm in control. So we have a whole bunch of customer services here, customer controls. Okay, and again, we're going to look at all of these. Okay, so the first of those then is compliance features. So if you work in pharmaceuticals, if you work for the oil industry, if you work for finance, you need to, and you're storing your data in the cloud, you need to prove to your industry body or your company that we're compliant. So if you need to be ISO 27001 compliant, again, you need to tick that checkbox and say, hey, we're storing our data in a Microsoft data center. I know that I'm ISO 27001 compliant. Okay, so yeah, so let's look at some of these features. So I don't know if you saw this demo yesterday, but I'll very quickly show this just now. In Office 365 here, this is an E5 account. So this is the voice enabled account here with Skype for Business. This is the one where you get a free phone number and PBX and all of this. I've got some users here. I'm going to go down into Microsoft Exchange. One of the things at the moment is if you've got anything earlier than Exchange 2007 on your network, you're not compliant, because anything earlier than Exchange 2007 never supported the archive feature. In other words, I couldn't keep a off-site copy of mail. You only had things like PST files, personal stores. But now we can actually set those up. If I go into my recipients here, and I'm going to go into Joey Tribbiani. I'm a Friends fan, sorry. I'm going to go into my mailbox features, and in my mailbox features, come back, there we go. I'm just going to scroll down here, and okay, come on. I'm not touching it. Okay. Okay. Doesn't like the video. Okay, so we'll scroll down again. And I'm going to go in here to, where am I? I'm going to go into archiving, and I'm going to enable Joey's archive. So if I go into view details, I'll just call this JT archive. Okay. And you get, it says it's actually unlimited, but they say it's unlimited, but they give you a 100 gig limit. But yeah, it's not really. So I'll go ahead and save that, and Joey's now got an archive. So he's now compliant. So that's proving compliancy. That's ticking one checkbox. Easy enough. And you can also do that by PowerShell as well, and you can initiate that for every user. So that's really simple. That's just one quick little option. Another thing then, you need to have an audit trail. So in Office 365, just like Windows Azure, I need to have an audit trail here. So things like audits, both for internal and external staff. So whenever I enable any of these features, things like litigation hold, mailbox access by a non-mailbox owner, or access to mailbox if you're an external admin or something like that, you need to have an audit trail on that. So if I then, let's take a look here. So in auditing here, of course, depending, this is my Exchange Admin Center. And in the Exchange Admin Center, if I go down to compliance management here, I'm getting that error because the user's not logged on. I've got this auditing area here. So in terms of accessing mailboxes, you can run a non-mailbox access report. You can run an admin, if there's an administrator accessing data, e-discovery. And this is an interesting one down here. So run an external admin audit log report. So is somebody at Microsoft accessing my data? You can actually go and view that. All right, you can see those reports. So that's just in Exchange, of course. So if I go back to my admin portal here, you also get a whole bunch of other reports that you can go in and view as well. Also, in the actual portal here, any requests you'll be able to go and see as well. And also it generates a log file for that. Brand new, which has just come out, is this one. This is customer lockbox requests. So again, this is now proving a new level of compliancy. So if you've got any open requests for a Microsoft employee to access your lockbox, to gain access to your account, you will actually see that information here. Okay. So likewise, things like Skype for Business, SharePoint, all have those elements as well. Now, on the subject of SharePoint, I was trying to set up a website earlier, but it was going so slowly. Has it actually worked? Okay, this particular machine is running Windows Server 2016. I've just installed so we've got a portal here. You can also see this is an in-place hold center. This is new SharePoint 2016, by the way. This is just the latest build of it. And one thing that you'll see about this is you're thinking, hey, hold on a minute, this looks like Office 365. So products like SharePoint, products like Exchange, products like Skype for Business are now built for the cloud first. So in previous versions, they were built for on-site and extended to the cloud. Products are now built for the cloud and extended on premises. Now, a lot of people are saying, does this mean that products like Exchange and SharePoint will eventually become cloud only? Yes, absolutely 100%. It's happening today, okay? So if I go back to my central administration, one of the things that we'll now see is, again, I want to extend my on-premises SharePoint directly into Office 365. In fact, some of the features are only available if you extend into the cloud. So again, all of this compliance, all of this security is going to basically affect you in one way or another. Okay, so auditing, as I said. So data loss prevention. So data loss prevention is a terrible thing. So if I go into Microsoft's favorite search engine, first of all, okay, and I hate the Norwegian. Why does it always do that? Okay, so I'm just going to put in a, I'll say site, I'll say co.uk, and I'll say file type, and I'll say XLS. Thank you. From the voice in the darkness. And I'll say, what shall we say? Let's say membership list. Yeah. Because nobody's that stupid to put spreadsheets on the internet with personal information, is there? Is there? Okay. So tennis clubs, swimming clubs, Bupa. I'm not going to open it, but athletics database. And I've seen some of this. It contains personal information, phone numbers, address, and you're thinking, what are you thinking? Okay? So, and the chances are that they're storing this on some web server and they don't even know it's being accessed. You can search for anything in Google, and I do mean anything, okay? From the weird and wonderful, but let's not go there. That's a conversation for another time. Okay. Okay, so DLP, the thing about data loss prevention is, let's say, for example, you have membership numbers. You have, let's say, driver's license numbers, social security numbers, personal information. Well, you might have a corporate policy that says no personal information, no account numbers can go outside the company. But of course, how do you stop that? You've got to train your staff. But staff are stupid, right? They don't know how to do that. So take people out of the equation. This is what we got to do. You got to do what we call a data loss prevention policy. Okay, so DLP policies, you've got a couple of things. In fact, let me just show you. So in my data loss prevention policy, down here, in fact, I can go into compliance, but what we also have in Office 365, if I just scroll down here, we have got a brand new, well, we've got the compliance center here. So rather than me having to go into all these different locations, we can go into one, and this kind of is quite cool. So we've got things in here. We've got data loss prevention. So in my data loss prevention, I'll create a new DLP policy. So is it financial, medical, privacy reasons, or is it a custom one? So, for example, I don't want to allow credit card numbers to go outside our organization. So anything that remotely looks like a credit card number, don't allow it out. Okay, so data, I like to call it data leakage prevention. Okay, so you can see that there are a number of things like financial, medical, privacy. And if you don't see yours, because I know Norwegians like that as well, you can actually add your own in. So you can actually add in a template. So there are, you can actually add those in if you want to. So let's do US financial data. So we'll just go next. Do you want to do it for OneDrive for business, for SharePoint, for Exchange? How do you want to set it up? Okay, so I said, yeah, I want to do it. Which financial law do you want to take into account? Okay, do you want to give it a name? I'll just call it test. Okay, let's go ahead and create that data loss prevention policy. So if anybody tries to send out PII, personally identifiable information now, okay, what will happen is it will go something like this. So I've just set up the policy, okay? Now it might be compliant to Norwegian data law. You might want to even create your own custom policy for, let's say, medical numbers, credit card numbers. So you set the policy up, you can customize it if you want to, and then it's enforced. It's enforced in Exchange, in SharePoint, in OneDrive, and also in Skype for Business as well. And it covers anything, an email, attachments, anything. So basically, if I send this is basically the PII. So if you go into conditions, you'll see what it's saying. And again, it tells you anything with the organization, I want you to stop. So when that email is sent, you can see that the user is notified. It says, hang on a minute. The email that you're trying to send doesn't conform with our rules. And actually, you're bleeding information. Are you sure you want to do this? Now, depending on how you set the policy up, you could just basically say, no, we're not allowing it at all, and just blanket it. The other thing that you could also do is the user could come back and say, look, this is not personal information. So they can actually come back and respond to you. And you can then say, okay, I'll make the decision and let that go. So you can do that. But you can create these policy tips if you want to. Or you can just completely blanket it and say, no, this is a violation of our rules. We're not going to allow this at all. You need to talk to your administrator. So if you're concerned about compliance, this is definitely one thing that you want to take a look at. Another thing that's really cool as well is rights management. So rights management basically has a call home feature, and it encrypts it into the document. There is no way around it. You can't rename it, you can't copy it. It doesn't matter where that document goes. So I throw that document out there, and if you try to access it, it will always call home to me. Okay? And it's user controlled. So I go into PowerPoint or in Word, and I'll basically say, okay, you can have a look at this presentation, but you're not allowed to print it, you're not allowed to forward it, you're not allowed to cut, copy, paste. And also, by the way, this document will self-destruct in 30 minutes. Yes? You can do things like that. And that is essentially what rights management works. So from Office 365 and Windows Azure, you just basically enable it. You just activate it, and that's it. That's all you do. You can also activate it through PowerShell there as well. Okay? And from then on, it's basically an end-user feature. Now, I've been showing you the Compliance Center. May I introduce you now to the new Office 365 Protection Center. This is the next generation portal. So one of the nice things is it allows you can actually import data into the cloud and export data. So this is your data. You can export it, get rid of it, whatever you want to do. You can control how you archive it. But also, another thing you might want to set up is data retention. So how long to keep that data for, okay? So this is basically what it looks like, and let me just give you a quick tour. So if I go into, I'm just going to come out of my compliance. I'm going to go back into admin a second, and I'm going to go into Exchange. And in Exchange, I'm going to go into Compliance Management, and I'm going to go into, you've got data loss prevention here, yes. You've also got retention policies and retention tags. So the retention policies are nothing more than a collection of retention tags. Okay, so you get a default mailbox retention policy. And you can see that you've got these retention tags here, 1 month, 1 week, whatever, and you can customize. So a user, if I get an email from your financial office, I can right-click on that and choose I want to apply that retention tag. Alternatively, you can, anything that comes in from you will automatically get a retention tag, like the tax office, 7 years or whatever. Andy, can I create my own retention tags? You know, I'm glad you asked that question. Okay, so retention tags here, there's lots of them, okay? Now, I got to tell you, retention tags are great. Anything more than 30 days, however, you need to have a exchange plan 2. Okay? If you want to keep data for, let's say, a year or something like that, you need to put the mailbox on legal hold and then apply the retention tag. All right? Otherwise, it doesn't work. All right? Got to tell you that. Okay? So if you've got, let's say, a business plan or one of the lower end Office 365 plans, it doesn't work because you've not got plan 2 for Exchange. And it's the same for SharePoint as well. Okay? So just be aware of that. Okay, so I'm going to go back to 365. And I'm going to go back into the Compliance Center. Let me just show you, this is a brand new screen. So this is the next generation portal, which has just been announced. And this is really cool. Okay, they've really thought about this. I'm just going to go in here and let's have a look at this. Okay, so what we've got in here, you've got a complete set of permissions. So you've basically, these are your various roles, RBAC roles in your organization. You've got policies. So here's my data loss prevention policies that I just mentioned. What about data management? I want to be able to import data into Office 365 or into Windows Azure. Okay? Please note at the moment the price for that is free. But there are rumors. I love rumors. Rumors are it's going to be $8 a gig. So it's pretty expensive. But again, that's a rumor. Who knows what it's going to be. So you can import, you can archive, and again in here, this is where you can set up your retention policies for both mailboxes and also SharePoint and OneDrive for Business. Please note the latest version or the current version of OneDrive for Business sucks. Okay? OneDrive, the maximum file size is 10 gig. OneDrive for Business, the maximum file size is 2 gig. Okay? It sucks. All right? File structures suck. I got to say, though, with SharePoint 2016, which is what the next generation of 365 is based on, all those restrictions are gone. It's been completely rewritten. All right? So, officially, I got to tell you, officially, the file sizes are unlimited. You can have unlimited. Okay? However, unofficially, I've been told that it might be 10 gig. So the same as OneDrive. Okay? So it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out. Search and investigation. So again, audit logs. So you can do a complete log search. And this is nice because it will search for all logs here. Yes? And you can really do a deep search. Also, the reporting has been really improved as well. So data loss prevention and auditing, these are on just because it's the only ones. Again, this is a new portal, so there will be more features added as well. Service assurance. Now, for the first time, you can actually go in now and pull off compliance reports, SOC reports. I want to actually view the documents, the questions. I want to perform a risk analysis. This is awesome. We've never had this in one place before. This was all over the place in previous versions. So this is really nice. And again, you can actually switch, you can specify in which region you are. And of course, this will adjust the compliancy reports and documents and things that you can actually get access to. Alrighty. So, what else have we got? I know I'm going to run over here. I apologize. Are we going into a break? Yeah? Oh, you don't mind then. Okay, who needs coffee anyway? Okay, so I mentioned this briefly yesterday, is the new Azure Security Center. This is, again, version 1 of this. One of the customer feedback that we heard at Microsoft was, my stuff's all over the place. Azure Security's all over the place. You had this Office 365 Trust Center. You had Azure Trust Centers. Now we're just going to have one place, one location where you can go and find everything to do with security. Great. Okay, this is awesome. This is what it looks like. You can create security policies. In fact, tell you what, let me just do away with that, just in case you didn't see my demo yesterday. This is Windows Azure. This is the new next generation portal that we have. 2 interesting places to go here. Your network security groups. So network security groups control things like traffic inbound, outbound to all of your virtual machines. You can also view your audit logs here. You can perform diagnostics here as well. Absolutely, definitely worth a look. New that we've got is the new Security Center. This rocks. So already you can see it's showing me that, you know, something's not right. I've not gone and deployed anti-malware, or it's not switched on, so I need to go ahead and do that. It's telling me that you might want to restrict access to this email address, or this IP address rather, and also it needs system updates, and I can actually go ahead and do those updates here now. I can actually switch on antivirus and anti-malware here as well. I can go into the security policies, and I can actually say, okay, what security policies do I want to set up here? Let me just do this. So I can say, do you want to view anti-malware, access control list on endpoints, network security, web application firewall, you know, do I want to switch on data encryption and so on. Now this is a set of tools which are quite new, and this is being built in all the time. There are new features coming online here all the time, so definitely take a look at that. I actually mentioned yesterday, very cool. I've actually seen it, I've played with it. So these are just some of the features that you've got on the Azure Security Center. The other thing that you've got, of course, is you've got the new Forensic Center, which is just about to come into preview. This is awesome. From a single click, I can now do a full forensic analysis on a virtual machine and so on. And I can pull off really detailed audit reports. You sat there looking at me going, whew, that's a lot of information, Andy. I know what you're thinking. Okay, so there we go. The changing world, keeping control and compliance. Now, at the beginning of the presentation, I showed you a trailer for my book, which I happen to have a couple of copies with me, just in case anybody wanted to buy it. Also, this is the new book, which is due December this year. Okay? Take a look at this. Hey, you're always late, Unescovich. Okay, so partner in crime. She's up next. Okay, enjoy the rest of NIC. I'm Andy Malone. Live long and prosper.